offense and defense. Christian McCaffrey and Von Miller, plus the new head man in our nation's capital. That would be one Ron Rivera. And Tyson Fury ahead of his huge fight against Deontay Wilder. It's First Take from Miami. Don't miss it. Never shy about his opinions, Richard Sherman voiced some strong criticism of the NFL and team owners for pushing a 17-game regular season. Take a listen.
I don't think it's something that players are interested in, honestly, and if that's the point they're negotiating on, I think these negotiations are going to go a lot longer than anticipated, because it's odd to me, and it's always odd when you hear player safety is their biggest concern, and they're really standing up for player safety, but it seems like player safety has a price tag. Player safety up to the point of, hey, 17 games makes us this much money, so we really don't care how safe they are if you're going to pay us this much money to play another game.
Welcome back into First Take here at the Clevelander in Miami, and I'm so glad that we have a coach and a player. Sean Payton, Louis Riddick here. Good to see you with us for this conversation. Coach,
and a GM pretty soon, hopefully.
That too. Max speaking
Absolutely.
Things into existence.
My football
I like
Giants, please. Sorry, go ahead.
Sean co-signs. Coach, do you agree with him that the NFL is hypocritical when it comes to player safety?
Well, look, first off, I'm a huge Richard Sherman fan, so when he talks, he's one of the more intelligent players, not only on the field as a football player, but off the field. Now, the one thing about these CBA discussions that go on between the players and the owners, as coaches, man, we're in that pool right there. Mm-hmm. And so when that segment was going on, I thought she's going to ask me, do I agree with it? Doesn't matter what I think relative to this topic. I do think it's a little ironic, though, that the focal point is player health and safety, and we've made strides in that area. But this is about more money for the players and how do they get that money. And so I'm not going to say they're hypocritical, but I understand the point the player has. And it's just a matter of the money you want to pay for that.
I understand. Yeah. I understand the point that he's making as well, but I respectfully disagree with him. The fact of the matter is, the NFL, everybody acknowledges, has been working on elevating the level of safety and addressing the safety issue. As they said, it is not a crime for the business of football to say, excuse me, we'll try to address this concern while at the same time we're trying to make more money for all of us. The reality is that in the world of business, when you negotiate, no one gets everything they want. You have to give and you have to take. And the fact of the matter is that the NFL is going to continue to try to make money. Now, if they make money and the players don't get any of it, that's a different argument. But if they're making money and the players are making money while still trying to address the concerns, I don't think it makes them hypocritical.
I also disagree with Richard Sherman, but only on the hypocritical point, because is anyone under the impression that the NFL really, really cared about player safety before it started costing them money? I mean, they were if an organization suppresses information, suppresses science from getting out into the press, until there's so much pressure to bear that it's affecting their bottom line, and then they do it. It's always about making money. And let me tell everyone something. Football's bad for your health. The more you play it, the more dangerous it is. We still love to watch it. I love the fight game. It's the same thing. It's just you have to accept that that's part of the bargain. So the more football you play, the more money they make, the less safe it is for the players. But believe that everything the NFL does is based on the bottom line. Even player safety, the concern in terms of how it's actionable is based on how they feel it's going to affect their bottom line.
All right, but you know what? You make a great point, though, Max. I think what's happening now is you're seeing players look at it like this. You're seeing players retire earlier and earlier. Players are making a lot more money earlier in their careers than they ever have. And players are not ignorant. Players are very intelligent as far as what are the long-term ramifications of my health the longer I play this football game. And people say, well, it's only just one more game per season. Well, over a 10-year career, that's 10 more games. That's 10 more opportunities to get your bell rung. And we're not even talking about the unreported concussions that happen every play. And you're right, as players, we all accept it. We know that on every play when you're hitting your head, it's not healthy. But that's what we do. That's what they do. That's what players are willing to go ahead and sacrifice. But at what point is enough enough? And that's really what Richard's trying to say. At what point is enough enough? We're smarter now than we've ever been Do we really need this 17th game?
Yeah, but my retort to that would be, if you're forcing it upon me, that's one thing. If we're collectively bargaining and negotiating, and you're saying, okay, you want this money, and we're saying this is what we want in return, then you take it or leave it. You can sit up there and nix it, but what you can't do is accuse the league of hypocrisy if we're negotiating something.
No, that's not true, Stephen A., because what the players are doing in a CBA is negotiating. There's a pie. Here's the money. The players just want a bigger slice of it. The owners are the ones saying, we want to put an artificial restraint on how much percentage we'll give you because we can't trust ourselves.
That's a different subject.
So, no, but the point is, so when they say, fine, you'll get more money, but now let's play an extra game, what the owners are really saying is, we're not going to give you a bigger slice of the pie.
What we will do
is make the pie bigger. That's all they're saying.
Without getting something in return. Without getting something in return. Which is last time I checked this business anyway. You
get things in return. It doesn't need to be a bigger pie.
Look, players are just not. Players are smarter now. Look, Coach Payton knows.
Well, and
they're
we're
much
also
more educated.
We're talking 17 games. That's all with the assumption there's going to be 3 preseason games.
Right.
So that gets narrowed down one game, and now you're dealing with the snap count, and each club handles that and handles how we practice differently now. You know, what we ask our players to do Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday is much different in training camp and during the season.
So, Coach, they're trading 2 preseason games for one regular season game.
Look, you talk about the give and take. I mean, Sean just made a great point. That may mean that the preseason, for all intents and purposes, goes away.
And it also
you want us to really go out there and play.
And it also
for 17 games. And we're not playing in the preseason.
It also may mean utilizing more of your second unit than others. You know, in a couple of more games during the regular season to save some guys as well.
Also
expand rosters, create more jobs. There are arguments to be made.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff to talk about.
Coach, I want to handle some business here quick, guys. Tell us what you're doing with Zebra Technologies.
Well, Zebra's with the NFL. They're with the Saints. They're with all the teams in the league. They're the ones putting the chips in the shoulder pads. So when we get a player's speed, for instance, like in this game right now, the 2 fastest teams in the NFL at skill positions are playing in this game. And that's just measured tight end, receiver, running back. 49ers and Chiefs, those are the 2 fastest teams. The chips in the football now, it allows us to track player data during practice back to injury prevention. So when we watch receivers during a Wednesday practice, I could see 7 miles would be an average. If I have an outlier at 9, I want to avoid soft tissue injury. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, they're the ones that have the
wow. Talk about next level.
Barcode. They're barcoding in Target. We all use that barcode technology.
Yep.
All right, we will get back. Thank you for that. We'll get back to the Super Bowl. Lewis, I haven't heard from you. Who do you think has more to gain with a win, the Chiefs or the Niners?
Well, as a team, I say the Chiefs only because of this. Only because of this. I think after 21 years of being a head coach, I think it's Andy's time.
Yeah.
And so they have a lot to gain. I think that kind of cements his legacy, although many of us believe his legacy is already cemented with what he has done in his regular season and his postseason record to some degree at this point. I think that kind of that makes him one of the football royalty. It makes him a Super Bowl winner, like the guy standing here. When you're a Super Bowl winner, people look at you differently. So I think there's a lot to gain in that way. For Pat Mahomes, for him to win this game and win an MVP.
Or Pat Mahomes versus Jimmy Garoppolo. How about for the quarterbacks?
Well, I think Jimmy in particular really has a lot to gain because people don't believe that Jimmy can deal at the highest level on this kind of stage with a kid who's really considered to be a transcendent prodigy as far as throwing the football is concerned. But again, I keep referencing the head coach standing next to us. He saw Jimmy G play. He saw him go up against his great Hall of Fame quarterback.
I think that's a lazy narrative at this point right now. When you got a guy in this Super Bowl, I watched him put up 40 points. He can't apologize for a real good running game and a good defense.
That's right.
I mean, I think every one of these quarterbacks would love the defense and the running game that those guys have.
Right. I would say the most to gain is Patrick Mahomes. And I know everyone's thinking, well, he's already so awesome. Everyone knows he's so awesome. Jimmy G's the one who needs the Super Bowl. And that might be true in most cases. Here's the difference. If Mahomes, after having the greatest season ever for an individual player, as a rookie basically, follows that up with a Super Bowl win, he's a supernova. The upside for him, what I'm saying is he's already #1 in sports. Most important position, biggest sport in the country, best player I've ever seen, distance between him and the next best guy, greater than in any other sport. If he tops that off with a Super Bowl win against this Niners team, are you kidding me? he explodes.
I totally disagree with you. The fact of the matter is everything that you just said about Patrick Mahomes elevate my point that it's Jimmy Garoppolo that has the most to gain. Because guess what? The Kansas City Chiefs could lose this game and still drop 35 or 40 points and lose this game. And we're still going to be talking about Patrick Mahomes in the same light Monday. But if Jimmy G goes out there and drops 35 or 40 in the Super Bowl and this offense for the San Francisco 49ers is churning, I'm talking about their passing game. I'm not talking about handing it off to Mostert or Tevin Coleman. I'm talking about Jimmy G flinging the football to Deebo Samuel, to Emmanuel Sanders, to George Kittle. If he does that in this Super Bowl against Patrick Mahomes, Jimmy G is seen in an entirely completely different light. But Patrick Mahomes, if we're talking about him, we'll be talking about him the same way now that we'll be talking about him Monday. Jimmy G, it's an entirely different conversation.
Jimmy G, obviously they all have a lot to gain by winning a freaking Super Bowl. Jimmy G would be elevated, no question. But Mahomes, there will be no buts about it. He will have done already everything there is to do as a second-year player. And I'm going to come out on this show if they win and Mahomes plays well, and he's never not played well. But if he really shines and they win, and I'm going to tell you, okay, now I have all the evidence I need. That's the best player who ever lived. In his second season, I've never seen someone as good as Mahomes. If he justifies that
I'll still tell you you're insane after two damn years. It doesn't matter. You still got years to go. You could have a great year. You could have a great 2 years. But excuse me, I'm still not going to give you a lifetime achievement award ahead of dudes that did it for 15, 16,
I'm talking about at your best.
I'm not doing that.
I'm not doing that. Any of you guys, Coach.
Listen, no, he's got to get past Elway and Favre, and he's got to get past man. Listen, we see his traits, and he's been phenomenal.
Coach, I'm not saying go. I'm not saying accomplish.
Let the coach speak.
I'm saying who at his best is better than this.
Listen, we've seen these guys we've just talked about. I mean, we're talking about Brady, who's got 6 of these rings, and but he's obviously the talent that we're all talking about.
Yeah.
I know what you're doing. You want discussion and argument. Here's the deal. Either of these guys win this game, they take all the money at the table, or they go home. They take it all. Yeah. And then they take the chairs and the table with them, too.
Lewis, have you ever seen, you're a huge Mahomes, you were the guy pulling the bandwagon at first, a player, if it's Marino, if it's Peyton Manning, who is as performing on the level
here's the interesting thing. That it's funny you mentioned that. My very first start in the NFL came against the Miami Dolphins and Dan Marino, when they had Mark Clayton and Mark Duper and Keith Jackson. And Dan Marino walked up to the line of scrimmage, and he stood there at the line, and he looked over at me, and he winked, and I was like, oh, boy. What does this mean? I've seen Dan Marino. I've seen the ball come out of his hand where all he did was flick his wrist, and it went 50 yards. He was a prodigy. The problem was he never won a Super Bowl.
Right.
That's why we don't talk about him the same way we talk about John and we talk about Joe and talk about Tom. If Dan won 1 Super Bowl, we talk about him in a totally different light. Right. That's why this game, Jimmy Garoppolo has a ton to gain by winning this. And as Coach just said, he takes all the money, the chairs, the table, and he shuts down the joint. And he goes, don't ever disrespect me again if I win this.
Mm-hmm. Coach, do you think we're underrating Jimmy G?
No, I don't think we're underrating him. Look, this guy, I've followed, he's from my alma mater, Eastern Illinois, New England Patriots. We practiced against him. His job description's a little different than this other guy, and that's the scheme of the team. All right, now, there's been always that question mark. I feel like he's answered some of those this season, much like, and I'm not going to compare him to Cousins, but Cousins had to, and unfortunately it came in our game, but I like what I've seen from Garoppolo. Now, is it to his advantage to get in a 45-40 shootout with the other guy? No, that's not the game.
I don't think it is either.
Yeah,
but that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I would agree.
If it were to happen, and he answered that call.
Absolutely.
I'm like, wait a minute. We already talk about Patrick Mahomes in this regard.
Right.
If Jimmy G answers the call on offense by going off, throwing for over 400 yards, he's flinging the ball all over the field. Yeah. It's like, what?
Yeah. That's what I think many people would like to see. Just from a pure viewership standpoint, that's what I want to see.
Yeah, I think if they lose, it's not because Jimmy G did anything wrong. It's because Mahomes is just different.
Coach, thank you so much for being with us. Lewis, appreciate it.